Welcome back to the Book Bros. I'm one of your Book Bros. My name is Stefan. Today we're going to be talking about the #1 dungeon supplier written by Malik. For a quick synopsis of this novel takes place in a world of a cultivation world where it's very much modern times, just the way that it is now, but with cultivation existing. And the way that that works is with cultivators being able to cultivate, there's a new entertainment business that is created called dungeon suppliers. And the way that that works is essentially a full dive VR game that you go to, like old arcades, go into this world, and you're able to train your own cultivation and fight and get the actual fighting experience that you need in the modern world. It's more used for an entertainment sense as being modern world. Most of the time you don't have to fight things anymore. There are monsters that do exist outside of walls, but essentially it's modern age, like how you would live day to day. Our main character, Jin, wants to become the best dungeon supplier on his planet, and he ends up getting a system that allows him to start doing that, create money, and just make him the best dungeon supplier there is on his. My thoughts on the first 100 chapters of this novel: it's slow in the way that the character interacts with the system. The system really takes control of the character with when it comes to the quests, when it came to like getting money, to running his business, like the dungeon supplier itself, how he gets his monsters, everything like that. The system really pushes the character to a certain point where the character finally realizes that he can't just be a pawn for the system and has to start making his own decisions, and the system will being a way to be able to do that. When it gets to that point, it starts growing more. He becomes more of a character, not just a pawn, and the book just flourishes after that. It's fantastic. Like, I think there's around 1,200 chapters right now, 1,200 chapters. And I'm just talking about the first 100. Like, after that, it just grows. How would I rate this novel? The plot of the first 100 chapters, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. It is very slow at the beginning, and it's an interesting concept that does get picked up later after the first 100 chapters. When it starts really snowballing, the plot becomes really, really interesting. But the first 100 chapters, it's not that interesting. You get kind of really put off the way that the character handles having the system and the way that the system's controlling it. So I can understand where like that whole plot, essentially that over arc, until he becomes like being like, no, I am in control, and the system, you are helping me as a person do this, not you controlling me to do your own desires as the system. So it's going to be a 3 out of 5. For subplots, I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5 for the subplots, because him getting the monsters, him like the subplots of a friend that like first starts showing up, like one of his first customers starts showing up, his subplots, what he has to deal with, and the way that Jin helps him, or how he goes to these other worlds and get these monsters, and how his cultivation grows, and where the system came from, and how the system's working. Like, there's so many small subplots within like the overall arc that it's fantastic. There's some plots that after he makes a dungeon, right, the game itself, and it follows characters going into the dungeon itself and playing for the first time, and them realizing how cool it is, and like the level of game that he creates. Like, I want to play those games. Like, it sounds so much fun. And with these subplots, is absolutely amazing. In the first 100 chapters, that's what really kept me reading, were these subplots that were happening, until like after chapter 100, where like it just like takes off, like everything takes off, like the main plot and everything just explodes into wonderfulness. The subplots really kept me there for the first 100 chapters, so definitely a 5 out of 5 for those subplots. Character and character development, he does grow a little bit, because in the first 100 chapters, some things happen, but not a lot of other characters get as much character development, except for maybe his the first character that comes into his shop that becomes like a regular. He gets some character development in the first 100 chapters, which is pretty good. But Jin doesn't get much character development until he stands up essentially to the system, being like, I am my own person, I'm not a pawn to you, like the system that's here now. And that's when his character development just takes off. Even in like 20 chapters. But like I said, I think he stands up like chapter around 70, 60, 70. And with even the next chapters up to chapter 100, the amount of character development is like way more than like the first like 50 to 60 chapters that is in the book. His character development just like takes off and he becomes his own character essentially that's not controlled by a system, and like his own personality that's just not slogging through life. So it's really fun and it's really cool to see it. So I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. For writing and translation, this is her first novel. She is a native English speaker. I didn't find issues with too much. Maybe a couple chapters at the beginning, because her first writing, I don't think she had an editor yet. So it was a little hard to read, but not too much. So I would give it a 4 out of 5 for her writing, especially when she gets an editor. I think around chapter 20, 10 and 20, she gets an editor and just immaculate. Like you hardly see any mistakes anymore or anything along those lines. Grammar is fantastic. But those first couple chapters were a little rough. I don't know if she changed it and went back, like the editor went back and helped her like revamp essentially those chapters. Because I'm at like chapter 1000. So, but yeah, 4 out of 5. Because there was some hiccups right at the beginning. But as soon as she got an editor around chapter 10 to 20, immaculate. I loved it. For foreshadowing and plot holes, there is some foreshadowing right at the beginning. In the first 100 chapters, but they don't come to fruition until later, past chapter 100. So you get small snippets of like, this is going to go on, or this is going on, this is going on. And it's like, especially with happening with some of the monsters and the world that he gets them from, he gets very small snippets when he captures them and what their life was and what's happening in their world. But you don't get like fulfillment from those foreshadowing until way later. So I'd give it about 3 out of 5, because they're there, but they don't get fulfilled in the first 100 chapters, which is kind of a bummer. But I understand where it is, because it is so long, like the novel. So it's really fun when you get up to them, but just know that the first 100 chapters, you're going to get the foreshadowing, and you are going to get fulfillment in those foreshadowings later on in the novel. You're just not going to get it within the first 100 chapters. The overall rating, I'm going to give it a solid 4 out of 5. I actually really, really enjoy this novel. I started reading it, I think, when it got about 100 chapters. I picked it up, obviously, because I only read things that have 100 chapters. So I was able to push through. For the age range of this novel, it could be younger. There's not a lot of explicit things. It does talk about heavy stuff sometimes, but this is more like the main character himself is like 23 or 24, so it is older audience, an older character. It's not a young character. Like, he's gone through college, he's done high school. It's not a young character, and there is some things where it talks about adult stuff and adult content that comes up, and heavy things that can do with like actual human life. So just a thought, like, if I would read this if I was older, maybe 16, 17, could get into it, but there is enough mature content when he's talking about certain life aspects that I don't think younger kids would understand too much. But definitely older audiences would absolutely love this, I think. Thanks for watching. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. Put some comments down below if you have any web novels that you want me to pick up. Just make sure they have 100 chapters, and I'll put them on my list to read. Yeah, so if you enjoy this content, stick around. Thanks for watching.